Congressman, good to have you with us. I'm going to answer Chris's question, get your take on it. The biggest mistake that the president made, and this is on him, this is on Donald Trump Sr., 71 years old, is he built his businesses by creating separate power competing fiefdoms. So whether you were bidding or you're building a golf course, you're trying to get something, he had all these groups, he had 3 or 4 separate, all competing, and he got the best result out of it. He tried to do that in his administration. It's failing miserably. It doesn't work. He's created fiefdoms of power. Kellyanne Conway, Steve Bannon, Jared Kushner, Ivanka, whoever else. Reince Priebus has got 60 people, right? So you got these 5 power centers, and you can kind of align Ivanka with Jared. They have chiefs of staff, communications director. They got 5 or 6 people. Priebus has got 50 people, and their job is to protect the interests of their counselor. This is failing the administration miserably. It is a fiefdom system that worked for him in business. He tried it in the campaign with Manafort and Lewandowski in May and June. That was a complete disaster. I was there. It was horrible. Worst days of the campaign. It didn't get straightened out till he fired Manafort and put Kellyanne in charge. You can't run a government this way because everybody's got their own interest. There should be a single interest, the president's interest, period. And look, I'm there. That's what I say. You can't sit in Richmond or Chesterfield or wherever I am and understand what's going on there until you get up there and you get immersed in it. And these competing fiefdoms are a disaster for this administration. There's only one person who can fix it, Trump. That's it. Okay, Congressman, sorry for the delay. Good to have you with us, sir.
Yeah, no, you're right on the money. I mean, on the Sunday shows, they went into that issue that you're just talking about, and it's not only these competing fiefdoms, but it's also every fiefdom has their own attorney, and the attorney represents the individual instead of the Trump White House and the objective. So it's pretty hairy. And I was just on. I thought the other thing you might say was grabbing a hold of the House or Senate health care plan, because I wish President Trump would have just come in with a free market plan that's business centered and just listen to the business guys. Because now I was just on Fox and Friends this morning, and Mark Short is a friend of mine in the White House, but he says Rand Paul is voting with the Democrats, against the Republicans on this plan. And I hate Republicans saying that about fellow Republicans when Rand's fighting a good fight for a free market model that we all ran on to actually repeal. And boy, it's just at the end of the day, we're going to be put in a terrible spot voting for more big government because our guys can't get their act together.
This Senate plan, and you were just on Fox and Friends talking about it. Now they're demonizing Rand Paul, which I think has had some of the best ideas of anybody out there on this issue.
Yep. I
can just say that's a mistake. But I want to back it because I want to support the president. I want to go with it. And they say, and I got, Tom Price is a friend of mine for 3 decades. He was my son's doctor, and I coach his son in baseball in Roswell, Georgia. I've supported him forever. He said, hey, John, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to do this, phase 2, phase 3, phase 5, phase 9, all these phases. You want to go with it, but you look at it on the surface and you say, how do you get there? It's a sticky wicket.
Yep. And this is the only opportunity we'll have to do it with 51 votes. That's what I think a lot of people forget. A lot of business guys are incrementalists in business. That's a good model. We'll just take the first step and then do it later. And that, unfortunately, that logic doesn't hold here because the incrementalist piece requires 60 votes in the Senate. And so we need to get 9 Democrat senators who show no willingness. Right? I mean, you got Mark Warner on the other side hyping it up right now. The odds of him voting for a Trump product are approximately -0.
Zero. So what do we do?
Well, that's what I mean. If President Trump, instead of just saying, statically, well, we just don't have the votes. That's what Mark Short said. Well, you just don't have the votes. Well, go change the votes, right? When you give your word that you're going to repeal Obamacare, you've at least got to fight as hard as you plausibly can to move in that direction. So the Freedom Caucus has been fighting like crazy. to move that bill in that direction, even though we know we're not going to get everything we want. But that President Trump can use his bully pulpit, which is just tremendous, and say, look, come on, you guys promised repeal. I got you on film, right? My interns have found all your clips, and it took me 5 minutes to do that. All of you promising to repeal, and now you're going back, right? You don't get to do that. And so, get on your courage, and let's go have a good vote and get this thing done this week.
So do you think it should pass as is, or are you looking for further refinements to it, Congressman? What are you looking for? What needs to happen to have Dave Brat back this bill?
Yeah, well, it's got to, at a minimum, have that Cruz amendment in there, which is kind of like our amendment, right, that we put in on the House side. You got to at least have the promise of some opening for the free market to work somewhere, right? I mean, so this thing, all the subsidies stay. Now they're not even getting rid of the taxes, right? And so they're saying we're repealing it because we're getting rid of a mandate or whatever. Well, if you got all the other stuff that basically forces a mandate and the subsidies to pay for the whole thing, and you're not getting rid of all the taxes, and you don't get rid of the regulations are Obamacare, right? So if at the end of the day, a young person can't go out and buy a cheap policy when they graduate from high school or college, then you have not done your job. And so it doesn't look like we're getting anywhere near that goal to me. So I got to see at least some crack and opening to free market reforms that, if the Cruz logic was, if you want your Obamacare, you can keep it. Every insurance firm has to offer an Obamacare product, but then you can also offer the other products alongside and see what people choose. So you got a choice to have an Obamacare product with subsidies and taking care of pre-existing conditions. All that's in there, or you can buy a cheaper product. And if in this country, the United States of America, we've just decided that the federal government's going to tell you what product to buy 100%, boy, that's a sad day.
So if the Cruz amendment stays, and I do happen to think that's one of the best things about this bill, because you're at least giving people the choice. But if the Cruz amendment stays as he's written it, can you back that in reconciliation?
Yeah, I mean, it'll at least make it easier for us to negotiate a deal that's better, right? And so we've negotiated like crazy. I mean, who would have thought we'd have a federal program in the first place, right? We don't want 1/5 of our economy to be managed from the federal government. So we've bent over backwards to accommodate the moderates. But if the price doesn't go down in the future, and prices keep going up at 20% a year, that means your insurance premium will double in 5 years. And right now, the average Anthem plan is $17,000. You like paying $34,000, right? Wait 5 or 10 years for that one, and that it's guaranteed under this logic. If we don't crack this federal piece open.
So what the Democrat opposition is saying about the Cruz amendment is that if you allow young people to buy bare bones insurance, that there's not enough money in the fund for people with pre-existing conditions. And because basically the whole Obamacare was, we want to subsidize the care for the sick with premium money coming from people that don't need the care, that are perfectly healthy. So if you cut that subsidy out, then the insurance companies have to jack rates up for those with pre-existing conditions that depend on that care to levels that price them out. So that's the Democrats' argument with this. And it's like, okay, well, now you're taking, a government subsidy away by allowing younger people to buy something that don't really make the insurance companies any kind of money they need to then subsidize the other coverage. How do you respond to that?
Oh, pretty easily. I mean, there's nothing ever new to the Democratic logic. It's just we need more of everything for everybody all the time. And that, in a nutshell, is the message in its simple form. And so if they want to play the morality card, the ethics card, the sympathy card, and talk about kids and all this kind of stuff, it's amazing to me, right? Medicare and Social Security are insolvent in 2034 or faster. Parts of Medicare, parts of Social Security within 10 years. And the kids won't get any program, right? So we're talking about making things more efficient so that these programs can at least stay in place. It's not too empathetic to have a program in place which is going to wipe out these programs for the kids in their totality in a matter of decades.
How would you fix the bill in the Senate right now?
Well, I know it's such a heavy lift. I mean, at least do have a vote on the Cruz amendment. Start looking at those subsidies. Start looking at ways to have more competition across state lines. Do some big pharmaceutical drug repair. Do some tort reform to get the legal costs down. There's still a ton of ways, and then basically what everybody also, if you talk to the doctors, there's no pricing or transparency. No one knows what good you're buying when you go into the doctor, right? Your kid goes into a health clinic. They might come out with a $20 bill. They might come out with a $700 bill for having the sniffles. Yeah, you have to ask that doctor every time you go in from now on, what is the price I'm going to end up paying? And we're not there. We're not even there, right? The basic thing we got to do is educate the American people to start asking about prices. And once they find out what's going on in that healthcare sector, they won't be happy.
All right. We're out of time. I want to thank Dave Brat for being with us. So, Dave, if you were in the Senate right now, this bill as it stands, would you vote green or red? Yes or no?
I'm red as it is right now.
You would vote no?
Yeah.
All right. And I just got to tell my audience, when Rand Paul is so opposed to something and Dave Brat is so opposed to something, you really, really got to take a step back here and look at what they're doing. You really have to do that. That is a combination that really should give you pause.
Yep.
Thank you, Congressman.
Yeah, you bet, John. And the flip side of that is we got to keep the momentum going, because the big thing that really does matter is tax cuts. And so we'll get into that next time. But if that's why we're under the gun, right? They got a bad product, but we got to keep the momentum going and make as many reforms as we can. So it's a tough problem.
All right, keep working. I got to roll. John Fredericks Radio Network. More info, DaveBrat.com. I'll be right back.